All right, you're welcome back. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has again called on the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, and indeed the federal government to devalue the naira as a way of adjusting to the realities of the current economic conditions.
Now, the IMF says the move will encourage private sector investments because foreign exchange flexibility plays an important role in enhancing investments. But the CBN disagrees. It has no plan for devaluing the naira, a stance that President Buhari has endorsed.
Another area where the IMF and the CBN disagree is the ban on the importation of certain items. According to the IMF, some of the products that are being disallowed are products that average Nigerians buy, and the restrictions on those products have made their prices skyrocket.
IMF also urged the federal government to scrap its system of multiple exchange rates in order to revive its economy, which is in its first recession in 25 years. Nigeria has multiple exchange rates, which some experts say creates distortion in prices, hurts businesses, and adversely affects foreign direct investment inflow.
Of course, there are presently more than 10 official naira-dollar exchange rates. They include pilgrimage, 197 naira to the dollar, customs duty, 285 naira to the dollar, interbank rate, 357 to $1, fuel imports, 316 naira to the dollar, international debit and credit card, 319 naira to the dollar.
Now, airlines, yeah.
Special rate, 355 naira to the dollar. Western Union, 360 to a dollar. Bureau de change, 388 to the dollar. And black market rate, 395. Also to the dollar. These figures are quite dizzying.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
If I could say that. Yeah, I mean, so many multiple exchange rates there. Now, joining us is an investment consultant, Ikenna Nwosu. Of course, we're expected to be joined also from our Abuja studio, an economist, Ken Ife. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Now, the IMF continues to say that Nigeria needs seriously to devalue the naira. As a matter of fact, the World Bank says that the naira is 20% overvalued. What would a devalued naira really do for the Nigerian economy, apart from the other issues cited?
Thanks a lot. Good morning. The issue of devaluation of the naira has been on the table for quite a while. And the truth is, in fact, as a matter of fact, the naira is actually devalued. But officially, it's not devalued. Now, when you make it official, there are implications. But the president, who holds the same position with the central bank governor, has said we're not going to devalue the naira for several reasons. Now, you find that our inflation is not controllable as such. Information I have about 17.5%, and that's what the IMF said.
Yes.
If you devalue the naira, it's going to worsen our situation. The prices of goods will skyrocket. And you see, the devaluation of the naira is seriously tied to the foreign exchange rate problem. You've mentioned 10 different exchange rates. Incidentally, customs exchange rate now is even 305 naira to a dollar, not even more, 285. It's so worrisome. There was a particular month. In that month, customs raised the foreign exchange rate for calculating duty 3 times in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So you can see what the foreign exchange, lack of having a flexible foreign exchange policy, how it's affecting the naira. Now you do an official devaluation, it's going to get worse. Look at the impact of the various windows. You cannot plan. It skyrocketed the cost of goods. It's made Nigerian customs, it's reduced the volume of imports with the 41 items listed.
Yes.
Because they can't source the foreign exchange at a rate that's good enough. With that, the volume of imports has drastically dropped. Now look at the impact. Customs Controller General was announcing last week he cannot meet his revenue target for the year. Shipping companies are dropping stuff because they are not getting the volume to come into the country. Now imagine you devaluing again, and you see how it's a snowball effect. The CBN's Director of Monetary Policy, Moses Tule, said yesterday that they believe in the CBN that Nigeria's growth rates should be higher than what the IMF is forecasting.
Yes.
Their reason being that with reduced volatility in the Niger Delta, there will be increased oil exports. And that now the foreign exchange policy, the economic recovery and growth plan is going to take care of it. However, that ERP envisages that the 41 items will be removed from the ban. But the CBN announced 48 hours ago that they're not going to do that. So the problem we're having in the dichotomy between the IMF and the CBN is that while the CBN is optimistic that they will achieve a higher growth target, the basis of their optimism is, in our professional opinion, is not very sustainable. Because when you say, for instance, peace in the Niger Delta, so you got that peace, the international community watches. The federal government does not have a clear-cut strategy of engaging with the Niger Delta.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll come back to this, but let me bring in Ken Ife here first before we go on the break. Ken is joining us from our Abuja studio. He's an economist. Ken, it's good to have you on right now. Now, the CBN and the IMF, or Nigeria and IMF, doesn't seem to agree over what policy should be adopted for the economy. Now, when it comes to exchange rates or the allowing the naira to float, as the case may be, the Nigerian government and the CBN don't want to allow the naira to float, but they are also not putting strategies in place to ensure that the naira finds a good place and can sustain even without assistance, as the case may be. What do you say?
Well, there can be no question that you can say theoretically it's desirable to have a floating currency, but you can't, because there's no market. It's not a perfect market. Now, look at the situation of the Nigerian government. If you allow what is being asked, there's going to be a free fall in the value of naira, and it will cause far more collateral damage to the economy. But there is light in the end of the tunnel, because there's a rapidly changing dynamics in our macroeconomic stability, in our fiscal and monetary stability. And in fact, confidence is gradually returning to the market. What is the effect of that? What it means is that foreign investors are now beginning to look into Nigeria. Your news says Brexit is looking towards Nigeria. Absolutely, that's correct. There are so many things that are happening. The oil price, the rising oil price, the steady growth in the output of oil, because we bought some peace in the Niger Delta, is bringing more cash flow to the CBN. So CBN is now bold enough to intervene repeatedly in the forex market. But also, we have delivered the economic growth plan, which is a precondition for the likes of World Bank and the ADB to come heavily in support of Nigeria to lend. And at the same time, we have had success on the Euro bond of about 1 billion and 500. So you've got money coming in there. Now, GDP calculators don't really know. All is see investment, even though it's borrowing. So those investments are coming in, they are going to GDP, because they are going to end up in improving the goods, supply of goods or supply of services. All of them are going to be picked up by the GDP calculator.
Yeah, Dr. Ife, let me put you on hold.
Increase in GDP.
Yeah, Dr. Ife, let me put you...
We need to temper.
Professor Ife, let me put you on hold a little. Sorry. We'll go on a break and come back, and you will certainly land on the points you're making. Stay with us on TVC Breakfast. Right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and on this segment we're talking about the discrepancies between or inability to agree between the IMF and the Nigerian government on what the direction of the economy should be to bring Nigeria out of the recession and to set it on the right foot for projection.
Yes, indeed. While the CBN is confident that the moves it has put in place are okay to bring Nigeria out of recession, the IMF doesn't agree at all.
Doesn't agree with that at all. We have guests in the house. Dr. Iken Nangosu, he is a council member of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry here in Lagos. We also have from our Abuja studio Professor Ken Ife. He's an economist. Now, Professor Ife, you were making a point when I asked you earlier on about what should be done. Go ahead now.
Yes, I think IMF needs to understand more the Nigerian position and Nigerian experiment. Well, I can understand that Nigeria expects, from minus 5% growth rate in 2016 to the projected 7% into 2020, averages out at 2.2% growth every year. I think that is a bit optimistic. IMF says 0.8 growth for this year, and then has now revised to 1.9% growth next year. I think they need to continue to revise, because they will continue to revise upwards, simply because the dynamics are moving in the direction of the Nigerian vision. And let me explain. Four clear areas. In the economic growth plan, the Nigerian government has said, okay, CBN, you have to reverse your policy and ensure that there is a steady growth of money supply into the economy of about 15% or more a year. And then the net domestic lending to the private sector must increase rather than decrease, go from 10% to 19.9% by 2020. Whilst at the same time, the government has to reverse and decline from 14% all the way down gradually to 10%. Now, that is marching order for the CBN. That is consistent with expansionary policy, and that is consistent with the money growth plan to actually make sure that the public sector is not crowding out private investment. So put that by the side. You look at success. They have already had success on Eurobond, on twice, 1.5 billion. These monies are coming in, and the GDP is seeing those monies. But there are flip side. Although we still expect more from ADB and the World Bank, some more money, and even China is coming in. But the fact is that whilst we desire the foreign inflow, we also desire the FDI inflow, because the FDI inflow goes straight to the productive sectors of the economy and stays for a long haul. Quite different from the portfolio investment, which comes and goes and they cancel out. So what you are going to see is that there's confidence returning to the market, and that confidence will rub off on the foreign direct investment, so that CBN's hand is strengthened, not just by gradual growth in oil revenue and oil output, but FDI kicking in.
Okay.
So these people have to be patient with Nigeria to see. We haven't even, budget is already about to be passed. Let them be a little bit patient. You can't talk about free fall. Let me tell you why you can't talk about free fall. You have Western economies and Eastern economies subsidizing their products to enter into the Nigerian market. EU is spending 75 billion euros subsidizing agriculture. So there's no perfect competition. You have, I'm not talking about substandard goods. I'm talking about the real good goods being subsidized to enter into our market and undermine our productive capacity. So, we have to take it all with a pinch of salt.
Okay.
And take one step at a time. But that's right in the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely want to really believe that along with you, Professor Ken Ife. Dr. Nwosu, do you agree with what he's just said? The bottom line really is really not, at the end of the day, it's really not about Nigeria's interest, but other interests that are factored in here. IMF says, yes, we do commend the economic recovery growth plan, but there is a need for Nigeria's economy to be reformed. I wonder which aspects you think Nigeria really needs a reform. These are two barreled questions that I just threw in.
No problem.
Yes.
My good friend Ken has articulated it very well. Investor confidence is returning because the Eurobond was oversubscribed.
Yes.
We saw that.
Big success.
But that's portfolio investment. Right now, so many final investment decisions under FDI are on hold, because you cannot invest in an economy where you cannot plan well. And a rule of the thumb for investors, if you cannot take your money out, you don't bring it in the first place. That's the standard rule of the thumb. So what you find is that in as much as confidence is returning, as Ken had said, but the real investment that is going to create the real growth, that foreign direct investment,
yes,
and domestic direct investment by Nigerians, is not there now. Remember, both Dangote Tomato Factory and Erisco were closed for the same forex problem. You know how many airlines have left this country? Because $547 billion naira is stuck.
Trapped.
So are you getting what I'm saying? So Ken, I'm agreeing with Ken. So in terms of what the government should do, this foreign exchange multiple windows needs to change. It needs to stop. IMF's reiteration of greater flexibility in the foreign exchange policy of the government is spot on. It has to change. The 41 items, you need to take them off. The argument that it puts pressure on the dollar.
On the dollar.
It doesn't hold water. When the last administration was ruling, those items were not banned.
But Professor Kenife just talked about something here where the issue of competitiveness. When you allow all those finished goods to come into Nigeria, you don't allow for competition. And then the local products don't grow, they don't improve.
Great. Now, Nigeria is a signatory to the WTO,
yes,
the World Trade
Organization,
which de-emphasizes ban of products. So if you don't ban it by tariff measure, you are now banning it by foreign exchange policy measure. Now, agreed that we have to be very careful so that our economy does not become subject to goods coming in, not substandard, but subsidized. The customs has a valuation unit. I've been in the freight forwarding business for 29 years. Any cargo that comes in, they know the rate. They have the value books, right from the World Customs Organization in Brussels. So that subsidizing of products can be checkmated. That is for sure.
Okay.
So that problem will not be a basic reason why the government will not shift position on the foreign exchange flexibility. Now, okay, you want to ask something?
No, I want to get to, because we're trying to manage time in here. So
Okay.
let me throw this question to Professor Ife before we come back to you if we have more time. Now, this multiple forex exchange rates is one thing that the IMF has said that Nigeria should try to narrow down. But we have not been able to do that. But how beneficial is it for the economy, for the continuous maintenance of multiple exchange rates? Professor Ife, this question is
desirable, but you could see that it is I said it's not desirable. Multiple exchange rates is not desirable, but it is closing down. The spread is closing down gradually because CBN is intervening regularly in the marketplace on a weekly basis. But the real issue is why Nigeria. I was one of the team of 5 that wrote the Nigerian trade policy, and I can tell you that Nigeria as a country is entitled to what we call safeguard measures. One of the reasons why Nigeria wouldn't sign the EP agreement is that we couldn't get Europe to agree to remove subsidies. And I have mentioned to you that about 75 billion euro is put on subsidy of agriculture. So on one hand, we're expected to become primary producers of raw materials, and then you have undermining going up there of exactly what we are asked to produce. Then look, listen, 2 key policy areas that require attention. One is, how can Dangote be investing billions on tomato processing and all that stuff, and you will allow other countries to flood your market with that tomato? It's not fair. How can you give license to 17 car assembly companies to assemble cars, invest heavily, and then allow 400,000 cars a year to invade Nigerian market through Cotonou? It's contradictory. The WTO rules allow you what they call safeguard measures. You cannot take that 2 things: infantry industry protection, and safeguard. When you believe that a particular line of tariff line is damaging your economy, is affecting it in a disproportionate way, you are losing revenue, there's collusion, you can suspend that. But there are guidelines. 1, you must have public interest justification. 2, you have to consult extensively along that value chain. And 3, it cannot be forever. It's only for a short time, 5 months, 1 month, 1 year, something like that. Those are the 3 guidelines. So Nigeria knows what it is doing. Maybe we have issues about how we are doing it. For example, we're not consulting adequately. When those 41 items were announced, there wasn't enough consultation, because you would have known that HS codes relating to import of raw materials for the industry should have been removed from the list. Secondly, we are not giving sufficient interval between enactment and going into force. You need to have sufficient interval. If you are going to ban cars, give them 3 months so that those who ordered can come in and they collect their revenue. You know, so, and you can raise tariff. Although we are subject to ECOWAS external tariff, CET, but we can raise it through the back door by increasing levy instrument. So that we are not violating CET rules.
All right,
so,
Professor Kenife, let me quickly bring it back to Dr. Ikenna before we wrap. Look, the U.S. too is looking at NAFTA again. Yeah. Which means there is a need for countries to ensure that it is in the best interest of your economy, whatever policies you come up with.
Yes, America first policy.
That's it.
That is it. I support Nigeria first, frankly. I support that. But just like my colleague Ken has said, you see, the primary problem that we are having in terms of global confidence is the sustainability of policy. It has to be consistent. Now, like
very
Ken
briefly,
has said,
if you can.
Yeah, like Ken has said, if you need to, if the 41 items thing came in and it's an admixture of both raw material and finished product, if we know we need to do some protection for some time, we have the WTO windows. We can use that, do the consultations, and then get that done. If you come to the issue of Niger Delta, where the CBN's confidence is that there will be more foreign exchange coming in when we sell oil. But are we sure that the peace in the Niger Delta is sustainable?
Okay, the fact remains that there is peace there right now.
Thank God for that.
We hope it continues. Dr. Ikenna Nwosu,
thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time on the show. And Professor Ken Ife is an economist joining us also from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Well, this is where we come to the end of today's edition of the program. Tomorrow we'll be back again. Have a great day ahead. I am Mike Okwoche.
And I am Ngozi Alebudu. Have a beautiful day.